The thing I used find for, I think the most in my sysadmin career was to find files that were of a certain age. Usually because they're filling up a disk or something, and you're like, you know what, everything older than 30 days I can just drop or whatever, right? Rotating log files, stuff like that, stuff that isn't automatically rotated. So I have a couple that are time related, which is the first thing I learned today. The touch command can change the modified time to whatever you want it to be on a file. I didn't know that. Here, have a look at my files here. See how I've got one that's in 2023? I did not go back in time and create a file from in 2023. That I was able to use touch. There's a touch dash D command that lets you change that metadata. It's crazy. I didn't know you could do that. Those filters with find that Scott was already touching on in the critical path. There's one called M time, which is the modified time. And there's other derivatives of M time. There's like a creation time, I think. And wasn't there an A time, like access time? I'd have to
That's
go look all
correct.
those up again. But so you can filter on other time related things like when was a file accessed or when they were modified, because that's most commonly what I think people care about. There was a comment in the chat that you probably missed while doing your demo. Rick and I both had no idea that if you're working in the current directory, you did not have to specify a directory. We've always used find dot and then the thing. So 3 things I learned today: touch, the working directory, and then there's one more that we'll talk about as I get further on in the demos. All right, so dash M time is modified time. And then you can use that same plus and minus syntax that Scott was using before. So this goes based on days.
You have to use extra criteria,
Okay.
plus one H or something like that.
I wanted to specify days or hours or whatever, and I just couldn't figure it out. So anyway, it's there. I just didn't take the time to figure it out. So
Yeah.
M time plus 1 says things that are older than a day, right? Things that are before a day. And I'm going to do another M time, and we're going to do dash 5. So things that are younger than 5 days, right? So anything that's between 5 and 1 days old should show up in my list here. And there we go. We have 2 files. There's file2 and elif2, which is just file spelled backwards because I needed a different file name for my later example.
So Nate, do you know where I use a find command like this all the time?
Where?
When I'm doing troubleshooting challenges. Like you walk up to a booth or something and they're like, "Hey, fix my broken machine." You're like, "Cool. Let me see what you've changed recently on the machine.
There
Tell
you
me
go. Perfect use case. Don't be ruining it though, because anyway.
now we can modify the time and
And
like set it back in time and like totally break that cheat."
that won't work anymore, folks. Don't try it. All right. So back on task here. So obviously, all I did was find the things and show them to you. Now, there's another command, and I think Scott showed this earlier. You use dash ls. I usually use dash print, which just prints it to the screen here, because there's sometimes you'll run a different subcommand of find. For example, if I did delete on these files, dash delete will simply say everything I find that matches this, delete it. But if I do that, it doesn't actually give me any output, right? So if I were to do that, I can't do it again now because it won't actually find anything. But if I added a dash print to this, then what it would do is everything it deletes, it'll also show me what it's deleting. Now, when you're doing this in like an automated fashion, you probably don't want it to print the output. You just want it to do the thing you asked it to do, which is probably why that's the default. But keep in mind that if you're trying to execute, is actually also 2 benefits here. If you're trying to test the command before you actually execute the deletions, use dash print instead of dash delete. Because then it'll give you the exact same command you were going to run. Instead of doing something, it'll print out the files that it's going to act on. If you need a log of what was deleted, add the dash print after the dash delete. And like I said, it's not going to show me anything here because I already deleted the files. But if I had not deleted them yet, it would have printed them as it was deleting them. So I would know what it deleted. So keep that in mind. I think that's a useful tool. Let's see here. Another example I have is what if I wanted to find, again, based on some criteria, I'm going to use the same time-based commands, and I want to modify those files. Like I want to change the contents of a file. So here, let me get my thing, and then we're going to cat one of these files, and you'll see what's in them. Oh, I need a number there. They just have a couple colors and the word dingo. And the word dingo was actually part of the description of today's video, which apparently didn't get pushed out. If anyone's looking at this video, they'll see the description still says we're talking about UBI. That was
Oh, no, I
last week.
fixed it.
You fixed
I
it. Good.
fixed it. Yeah.
Okay. So go look at the description now and you'll see why I said dingo. But so all these files have the same text in them. If I just did like a cat file star, you'll see they're all the same content. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a command that will find all of them that were modified between 1 day and 60 days. And then we're going to exec sed on them, right? We're going to do a sed in place and we're going to swap the word green for the word orange, right? And you know what? Just for fun, I can show you which ones are going to get modified and show you
Oh,
that print command by adding dash print.
before you we, we did have one request from Shantanu earlier in the stream, which is when we're doing exec actually has a very specific convention of syntax that it has to have. And
Yes, we can step through that. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, with exec, what you do is you basically enter in your command the same way that you would, but you need some way to insert the thing that it's supposed to execute on. And that's what these two curly braces are for, right? So two curly braces right next to each other, that's a substitution that says, okay, the thing that you found, put that path and file name right here. So I'm using sed in place, and then the curly braces will be the thing that it's executing on, right? And then you have to terminate the command, right? Because I guess you could exec more than one at a time. Maybe that's why you have to terminate it. I don't know. But you have to terminate the command with a semicolon. But just like with the stars that Scott had to put inside of single quotes earlier, or you'd have to escape, Bash will interpret that semicolon as the end of the line, right? So you have to escape the semicolon in order to send it to Bash, or not send it to Bash, send it to find and the exec command so that it treats it as the end of the line. So that's that funny syntax we were talking about. All right, so I'm going to run that, and you can see that it touched file 3 and elif3. And if I do cat file star now, we should see that the word green was changed in one of the 3 files. And the same thing if I did the elif star, right? The word green has been changed to orange, right? So that's, again, a good way to, and you can craft any manner of criteria for what you want that file to be that it found, and then execute the command. And in fact, I have another command in a little bit where we're going to not only find specific files, we're also going to use sed to replace a name in it, and we're also going to execute a command that will change the file name, right? So we can do all that in one command, which kind of shows the power of what find can do here. Now, the other thing I wanted to cook up was, what if I wanted to find files containing a text string? And I started looking into, can I do this with find? And I realized, why would I do that when I have grep? Right?
like, why? Nate, you love making things needlessly complicated. Let's throw more commands into something you could do more simply.
So if I do a grep-r for the word orange in the working directory, it'll find everything that has the word orange in it, right? So there was really no reason to do this with find. So I just did it with grep because grep is exactly what this is for. So there's your bonus for today. It's not a find command, it's a grep-r. And you can also do that case insensitively if you want to with a -i, grep-ri. So if the word orange had a capital O or something, then there you go. So there's your bonus for today. And then the last example that I have in my series here are this complicated one that I was talking about. And this is the third thing that I learned today, which was how to use the bash rename command. So we're going to paste this in here and I'll walk through it here quick. We're going to use find. We're going to find all the files named elif star. And again, I escaped the star where Scott put it inside of quotes. You can do it either way. Right. Then we're going to execute sed -i. We're going to swap the word dingo for the word kangaroo because we're staying in Australia here for whatever reason. We're going to use that same curly braces syntax to say what file to execute that on. And then I add the semicolon, and I added a second exec, but now I'm curious if I dropped the second -exec, would it just run the 2 commands separated by the semicolon? But I don't want to break my demo. So I'm going to run a second exec here, and we're going to use rename. And the way rename works, and this is what I learned, is you can say rename files based on a pattern, right? So I'm renaming files based on the pattern elif, right? Because that's the thing that's currently in the file. I'm going to replace elif with foo, right? And then I'm going to do it on the file that it found, right? And again, I could add a print in here if you want to see what it was doing, but I don't want to mess this up. So we're going to hit enter. And if I do an ls-l again, you're going to see all of the elif files are now renamed as foo. And the word dingo is replaced with kangaroo. If I look at file 1, it shouldn't be replaced, right? Dingo is still there. And the other cool thing is it should have gone into this subdirectory here and done the same thing, right? So you can see all the elif files that were in here are now renamed to foo. And dingo is renamed to kangaroo, right? Both the power and the possible pitfalls of find. If you're in a working directory, remember that this is going to dive into those subdirectories because that's what find is made to do. I don't know if there's a don't descend to subdirectories command for find. I'd have to look into that.
There is.
I'm sure there is.
It says depth, I think is the name of the option. But there's a couple different ways that one could control how wide and deep find goes when looking for files.
Right.
You asked about if you didn't escape the semicolon, if it would just run. No, it would break.
Yeah, what I meant was if I took this command up here, and not if I didn't escape the semicolon, if I took out this word exec, if I did it like this and string the two together, would it execute both?
I don't think so because you have that semicolon that was escaped that terminated your exec statement, right? So there's no leading exec to tell it the next thing is also an exec statement.
We're going to find out, I think, because this is my last demo and I don't mind if I break my machine at this point. So we're going to change this from elif to file and we're going to see if they both execute. Anybody want to take any bets? All right, maybe not. Yeah, there you go. Must proceed expression rename. So yes, you have to use the -exec for each one. So why the hell does it need the semicolon? I guess that's just so it knows where the end is, I suppose.
The semicolon is the end of your exec, right? So you open the list of commands that you want to run with your exec, and then you close it with the semicolon. What you could have done, you might have been able to take out the no. I'm sure there is a way to combine multiple executions on the same thing. I think it's just a syntax thing of like us trying to do it, right?
Yeah. Now, one thing I will call out, whenever you look up find commands for how to do things, you're going to find a dozen ways to get the same thing done. And the reason for that is find has a bunch of these subarguments that will execute things that you could also do with bash, right? If you execute them with bash, then what find does is every file that it finds, it calls up a new process to do the exec. So in this case, when it ran, it would have called two separate processes, one to do the sed and one to do the rename. And if you're dealing with thousands of files, that could quickly tax your system. And a lot of experienced systems administrators will say, don't use exec unless you have to, especially if you're dealing with a lot of files. So just keep that in mind. The exec command is powerful, but it can also really be detrimental to your system when you're dealing with a whole lot of files. So if I had done something that would touch everyone and use grep to find something, and it's going through thousands and thousands of files, it's going to open thousands and thousands of instances of grep, which is not okay.
I disagree. It's 2025. Nobody cares about CPU usage anymore. It's not like that we had single core Pentiums or something silly that we were running Linux on.
But go look up anything, any examples of find commands, and you will always find someone in the comments. Do it this way. It'll open less processes. So now you know.